Ladies and gentlemen, Latino voters, Hispanic voters saved this country in 2024. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. I will explain the upcoming Supreme Court victory that is imminent. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel. It's in the description. It'll be in the pinned comment for the latest on the Supreme Court victory, the imminent Supreme Court victory, and subscribe to that channel as well. We're almost at 20,000 there, and we're almost at 300,000 subscribers here. To my super chat, thank you. Latino vote, super chat, anything, within reason you want to talk about, any midterm analysis, the upcoming convictions or indictments of Brennan, Comey, Letitia James, Bolton, and others. But let's get started. Trump came close to winning Latino vote in 24. Pew analysis. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason why the Supreme Court is going to, and you'll, in a couple of minutes or seconds, you'll hear the analysis and watch the analysis in a couple of seconds. But here, Supreme Court seemingly inclined to gut key provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Well, why? Why wouldn't race or skin color or demographics be still keep Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act relevant in today's world? That could get 19 more seats for Republicans. It will get 19 more seats for Republicans, and they'll keep the House of Representatives and the Senate. But why will the conservatives, 6 conservative Supreme Court justices, because when they cheated Bernie Sanders and they had top secret intelligence on private servers, and they were corrupt beyond recognition in 2016, all throughout the past 10 years, they lost the ability that President Trump had to get 3 Supreme Court justices. They did that to themselves in 2016 with a primary that was a complete farce. But Latino voters saved the country, and here's why. In 2016, Democrats got 66% of the Latino vote. Trump only got 28%. That changed to President Trump almost winning 50+% of the Latino vote, and Democrats going from 66 to 51%. Trump going from 28 to 48%. What does that show you? That shows you that demographics, minority voters, people of color are not tied directly to any political party. The notion among Democrats is that Black voters, African American voters, Latino voters, Asian American voters, people of color will always vote Democrat. This is not true. Trump almost won the Latino vote. So the Latino vote, the Hispanic vote, shows that demographics are not tied to a specific political party. But hit subscribe, check this out. We'll get to that more in a couple of minutes. But that's the reason the Supreme Court is going to give Trump a huge victory. It's all over the news. That's the reason, ladies and gentlemen, because skin color or ethnic or national origin, it does not directly tie anyone to a political party anymore in 2025. The Latino vote proves that. Hit subscribe. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel as well. Check this out.
Strategist May Mailman. May, it's great to see you here today. It looked like in oral arguments the Supreme Court may be ready to put an end to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, meaning no longer can you use race to gerrymander these minority districts. You can't ensure, for example, a black district in Georgia.
Really quickly, again, why can't Democrats state any longer that certain groups will be disenfranchised? Because President Trump has gone from 28% of the Hispanic and Latino vote in 2016 to almost winning the vote. He went from 28% to 48% in 10 years. Democrats went from 66% to 51% in 10 years. And you can say, well, that the Latino vote is dwindling among Trump. It isn't as strong for President Trump now. Well, it was 99% negative media coverage, and still he won running on a campaign of enforcing immigration laws, and he almost won the Latino vote in 2024. So the numbers will go back to exactly where they were him almost winning the Latino vote. The point, ladies and gentlemen, is that Democrats cannot say that minority voters always vote Democrat. This is not true. They're losing support among minority voters and people of color. Democrats have been losing support for the past 10 years. And the Latino vote proves that. But also the African American and black vote, the Asian American vote, they're losing support among all people of color. But let's continue.
Yeah, it's 2025, and it is time to stop drawing lines on the basis of race. We've had a black president. We've had a black and Asian vice president. As we see the race right now in Virginia, Republicans are going to vote for the black candidate, and Democrats are going to vote against. We are in 2025. It's time to move on. But unfortunately, you see justices like Ketanji Brown Jackson who do not agree that we should move to a race-free society, and instead want to portray race as disability. They want to see this as a disability, something that should be treated, something that should be focused on. And that takes us well before the Civil Rights Act. And so that type of thinking, race as a disability, is exactly the type of thinking that we're trying to get away from, but that you see Democrats, or that you see Ketanji Brown Jackson trying to elevate more and more.
Yeah, I think for anybody watching, they're probably sitting at home wondering, well, if you drew primarily and intentionally white districts, that would be not just racist, but it would be unconstitutional. And here we sit today, as you point out, in 2025, asking, why then can you do it in reverse? Why can you intentionally draw black or brown districts in America? The answer, by the way, the Supreme Court is debating is whether or not they are allowed to or compelled to by the Voting Rights Act. But as you point out, it's no longer 1965.
Yeah, in order to get these districts that have a black majority, states like Louisiana have to take pieces of New Orleans, pieces of Baton Rouge, snake around here, make a circle here, and it doesn't make any sense. If they were going to use neutral principles about keeping districts together, about incumbent protection, yes, sometimes about partisan advantage, but the things that people always use in redistricting, then it would look a lot different than this. And so what the Trump administration said is this is as if LSU had a policy where if a black student and a white student were totally equal, and the government is saying, but you have to pick the black student. That's what's going on here. It would never be allowed at LSU, but somehow it's being required under the Voting Rights Act.
In Congress, not allowed at LSU, but required for Congress in Washington, D.C. After the Civil War, the Civil Rights Act, Jim Crow, and another half a century, it might be time for America to actually consider not enshrining race-based policies, but in fact being exactly as you said, May, race neutral. Great to see you. Thank you.
So like I said, ladies and gentlemen, the Pew Analysis right here is an Axios article. You can look right here. In 2016, Democrats got almost 70% of the Latino vote. They went from 70% of the Latino vote to barely winning the Latino vote, 51%. So 66% in 2016, and it was cut down to 51%. That's 10 years, by the way, of non-stop coverage of Trump, calling him every despot authoritarian on the planet. And they lost. And it's almost as if Democrats don't realize everything they're trying to do, the hyperbole, the absurd nonsense, the apoplectic, hysterical accusations of Trump, it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. They're losing support among key demographics. President Trump, on the other hand, went from 28% to 48%, almost getting over 50% in 10 years of the Latino vote. That's huge. Check this out, ladies and gentlemen.
Took Bill's time. Sorry. Thank you.
It's all good. Took John Yu's time. Here he is. How do you feel about that, John? Former Deputy Assistant AG.
Terrible.
Law professor at Berkeley. We'll cheer you up here. So simply put, Louisiana took two cracks at this. One favored African Americans, one favored whites, and the Supreme Court's going to decide this. Here is Brett Kavanaugh talking about how you remedy this. Go ahead and listen here.
This court's cases in a variety of contexts have said that
race-based remedies are permissible for a period of time, sometimes for a long period of time, decades in some cases, but that they should not be indefinite and should have an endpoint.
Point he's making there, and you heard David Spun say 60 years, 1965. So he's arguing that there was a sunset period possibly that was built into this law. How do you read that? Do you think he's right?
I think he is right. I think you can see that this view is motivating the 6 conservative justices on the court. Here's the basic issue. The Constitution bans the government from ever using race. It wants all of us to treat each other the same, regardless of our skin color, race, national origin, religion, and so on. We allow deviations from that core principle to just make up for past sins, for the government's use of race and segregation in the South for so many years, or for slavery before that. And what Justice Kavanaugh is asking is, when does that end? It's 60 years later now since the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It's been 60 years since the government has forced states to try to use race to create these what are called majority-minority districts.
For Democrats, it never ends. It will never end for the Democratic Party because they cannot. The theme or the marketing spin or the political ideology is that only Democrats will help you or save you or protect you. Only Democrats will help you if you're of a certain ethnicity or skin color or background. Only the Democrats will help you. The Republicans can't help you at all. It's the most bigoted and warped and twisted mentality. We see from Latino voters right here that after 10 years of calling Trump a despot, authoritarian, twisting his words, trying to say that he denigrated people of color, trying to say that he was bigoted and horrible and terrible, a monster, and yet Democrats lost. What does that show you? It shows you, number one, that the Democratic Party and media have lost influence in modern American politics. They've lost influence. But it also shows you that people of color vote on the same things that all Americans vote for. People of color vote on foreign policy, enforcing immigration laws, economic policy. Latinos viewed Trump's economic policy better than Biden's and Democrats. His foreign policy better. They wanted to enforce immigration laws. Okay, Democrats, whether it's called identity politics or whatever you want to call it, Democrats think that because you look a certain way, you need to vote a certain way. That's why Biden said, well, if you don't vote for me, then you aren't who you are, okay, to Charlemagne the God. But that is the most narcissistic, arrogant, bigoted way of looking at politics. And it's something that Democrats have done for a long time.
To increase the number of minorities who actually get elected to Congress. But that's got to come to an end. It's not going to be, and it shouldn't be under the Constitution, ever permanent. And the court's been making that clear in other areas, like the Harvard case, where it said no more use of race in college admissions. I think that campaign for a colorblind constitution will continue here, and the court will say no more use of race when states draw congressional districts either.
Okay, let me come back to that. A New York Times, a Supreme Court case that could hand the House to Republicans. There are some who believe if the court rules as you're describing there, John, that the GOP could gain 19 more House seats. Do you see that as reasonable?
It's possible. I am sure the justices, when they decide this case, don't care and won't look at what the effects on the midterm maps may be. Now, what's been going on, note, is that these states, in order to create these majority-minority districts, have done what's called crack and pack. They've packed minority voters into tight districts on the assumption they'll vote for a black or Hispanic or even Asian candidate, which I think, by the way, is offensive because it assumes that people of one race will vote for people of the same race when they vote for office.
It's very offensive. You should get, if you're watching this live stream, there are left-leaning, far left pundits, and they've made their views of people of color who are conservative or minority voters who are conservative very clear, and it's shameless. It's the most bigoted viewpoint, and then they twist and contort themselves. Well, I don't even want to repeat their argument because it's so bigoted. But when Democrats or liberals or progressives or leftists view a person of color who's conservative or a person of color who just will not vote Democrat, maybe not Republican, maybe not for Trump, but not vote Democrat, they're met with vitriol, scorn, demeaning comments. It is the most outlandish political ideology to assume that just because you're of a certain identity, you must vote Democrat.
What will happen, I think, if this practice ends, is that there will be more minorities spread out into more districts. That might make more districts competitive in the long run between Republicans and Democrats, even though in the short run, it might lead to less Democrats in the House in the next election.
What if I argued the other side and said, if I'm a minority, how do I find representation under that interpretation of the law then?
Well, this, I think, is the pernicious view of...
You find representation as an American by voting for any candidate you want to vote for.
The Voting Rights Act and the 15th Amendment that this cause has adopted is the idea that because I have a skin color or you have a skin color, Bill, you think you're only represented by people who look like you. What if you want to be represented by people who share your interests instead? Suppose I want to vote for someone who has my view on tax policy or foreign affairs or Israel. Why does race and skin color have anything to do with your view or my view on policy issues? And I think that's what the court wants to end. The court wants to end the practice of the government assuming that you and I have certain views and think a certain way just because of our skin color.
Quickly, John, would they give a sooner? You heard the question that Dana gave to David Spunt. Is this like, do you have to wait until June? Is that too late? What's your view quickly on that?
Quickly, I'm not yielding any of my time to Spunt, but what these state legislatures could do is just pass a new map and say the new map comes into effect if the Supreme Court strikes down the Louisiana voting map, and otherwise leave the districts as they are.
Okay.
And because Democrats have gerrymandered to the point of oblivion, they can't gerrymander anymore, Republicans will get 19 more House seats, which will cement a victory. Okay, they gerrymandered for years and years and years. They can't do so anymore. Let's just really quickly. They're also facing terrible, terrible poll numbers in terms of approval rating. Check this out.
This is what Democrats are looking at in terms of a challenge to take back the House, the current balance of power. With those vacancies, if they are filled the way we expect them to be, it would be 220 seats for the Republicans. There it is, 220 for the Republicans, 215 for the Democrats. And that would mean Democrats really would only need a net gain of 3 seats to get the House. Now, keep in mind, Republicans are trying to redraw maps in a number of states right now to boost that total. So there may be more of a pad here for Republicans.
So the Supreme Court, once the victory is upcoming, it's imminent. So they're going to get more than 3 seats Republican, or 3 seat, difference or padding. So they're going to get possibly 19 seats. New Republican seats in districts that either vote Republican or that are favorable for Republicans. Okay, because Democrats, they have gerrymandered to the point where they can't do so any longer. Okay, that's something they've done for a long, long time. Not so with Republicans were not as good. Both parties did it, but the Republicans were not as good at doing so. Now with Section 2, where you can't, being repealed, where you can't draw a congressional map simply because of skin color, You just draw a map that makes, geographic sense instead of going out of your way to draw new maps because of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2. Republicans get the House, but let's continue. They also get the House because of how unpopular and disliked Democrats are nationally, even with media and Hollywood and all the advantages they have.
Then meets the eye when you just look at this balance of power. So that's one challenge for Democrats. But of course, Democrats are hoping that this goes like the midterm did in Trump's first term. And if it did, this would be nothing because Democrats gained 40 seats. It was a blue wave in Trump's midterm. So the thing about that midterm the first time around was you could see it coming from a long.
They had the trust and safety team at Twitter. Hollywood media did not have the people still trusted media, or most Americans trusted media. Now 70% of Americans distrust media because they've lied so much. They lied about the Russia hoax. There was not a shred of evidence pointing to Trump and Russia. They still people that think that Trump colluded with Russia. Okay, they lied about Trump's words. He never said both sides. He never referred to 1930s and 1940s Germans as fine people. The media, you can see what took place, fiery but mostly peaceful. You had $1 billion to $2 billion in property damage Trump's last year in office. The entire world and the country shut down because of an apoplectic response to a serious issue. Very serious issue, but it was the most hysterical, apoplectic, counterproductive response. And again, you couldn't talk about certain things. You would be deplatformed. That was the past 10 years. So in October 2017, it was a very different America in terms of what you could say. Well, let's put it this way. Media was still very important in American politics. Media still had a tremendous amount of influence. It doesn't have that influence anymore, especially with President Trump's second term.
Long way away. October 2017, more than a year out, the generic ballot asking folks which party do you want to see control Congress. Democrats were leading on average in the generic ballot by nearly 8 points. And this was the level they basically maintained through all of 2018, right up to Election Day, right up to the blue wave when they gained 40 seats and flipped the House. So where is the generic ballot right now? Well, Democrats lead it, but not by nearly as much. It's a 3-point average lead for Democrats on the generic ballot now.
3 points is oftentimes the margin of error for a lot of polls. So they're not leading anything. You have to also factor in with these polls that Democrats have virtually all of media as an echo chamber or a public relations monstrosity. They have Hollywood. They thank God they don't have the social media algorithms anymore. That changed in President Trump's second term. But they had the social media algorithms in October of 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. So they had so many advantages 8 years ago. They had so many advantages that they don't have now. Plus, check this out.
So again, this is not terrible news for Democrats, but there was clarity even at this point in 2018 that something was coming. This number suggests you're not at that point right now. And one of the reasons Democrats may not be at the point has to do with this, the image of each party. Again, looking back here at October of 2017, if you looked at all the polling back then, neither party was popular, but one party was a lot less popular than the other. Republicans in Trump's first term, 27% average favorable score at this point. Democrats were up at 39%. There was a pretty clear imbalance there. It worked to the favor of Democrats. What do you have right now when you run these same numbers? Well, again, neither one's popular, but the Republicans are sitting at 41 favorable, the Democrats at 35 favorable. The Democrats are less popular than the Republicans.
Democrats are less popular than the Republicans. Trump almost won the Latino vote, and that's with 10 years of the most apoplectic, hysterical, maniacal coverage of Trump, where everything he said was twisted, where everything was either twisted or amplified to the point of absurdity. And They accused him of working for another country. All of his quotes were presented in the most disingenuous manner. His policies were overlooked. Everything good that he did was never really touched upon by media. Every misstep was a calamity beyond belief. I mean, you had the most apoplectic media coverage, and Democrats had media every single night. You have wonderful, morally superior Democrats going to bed with Jimmy Kimmel tucking them into bed and telling the world how terrible Trump is, and then they wake up to the ladies at The View yelling about how terrible Trump is, and then they can watch MSNBC and CNN or read the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Atlantic about how Trump's going to sell the planet to Martians. And still, Democrats are less popular because that echo chamber is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The political viewpoint that Trump is a maniac, that is a fringe viewpoint. That was always a fringe viewpoint, but it was amplified in 2017, 2016. It was amplified. So then people who weren't really into politics were like, is there any truth to that? Now everyone knows. Everyone knows that the hysteria, the propaganda against Trump is futile. There's no point to it, and Democrats lose support. They're less favorable now. Now, what are they going to do? What are they going to do, ladies and gentlemen? What are they going to do in the next year for them to become more favorable than Republicans? You tell me.
Now, and that's one of the things when you look at midterm elections, the opposition party counts on getting a bit of a boost just from being sort of the protest vehicle for anyone who's got issues with the White House. Democrats, though, with numbers like that, you got to worry a little bit. Are people wanting to send a message to them as well, Gabe? Are you?
Did David Bowie say changes? They're coming.
That's
yes,
true. What did Jerry Mandarin say? That's the question.
So nationally also, Democrats have nobody on deck waiting in the wings. Who's going to save the political party? AOC? Who are they going to run in 2028? Forget 2026. Who are they going to run? Who's going to be the next candidate they cheat for or they just pick in the primary that is a farce? Who? I mean, Gavin Newsom? AOC? A lot of these Democrats have had recall after recall in their own states. So
the reason Democrats are so worried about redistricting is because the party is in shambles. They have no leader and the base is historically divided. Listen.
It is a complete and utter mess.
Correctorius, thank you. Dems are going to leave a very poor midterms, I think. Wonder what happens after if they do poorly. I'm going GOP down paper in Wisconsin. Yes, the Dems' leading candidate in Wisconsin is the former lieutenant governor. Yes. Correctorius, thank you. Thank you so very much. I agree with you. It's not gonna. I agree with you 100%. I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm voting Republican down the line. Trump Republican, but I mean the Democrats. I don't even know what they stand for. Thank you so much for the super chat. I don't know what do they stand for. If they don't like ICE agents, why put government employees, government law enforcement officials, or workers and their families at risk? Simply run on repealing deportation laws. I've done a lot of work on this. They can run on repealing specific laws. They don't want to do that because if they did that, they would lose even more support because it's popular nationwide. That's why Trump won. Everyone, Black, Latino voters, people of color, want immigration laws enforced by and large. That's why President Trump won the minority vote greater than any Republican in a generation.
It is messier than a hoarder's basement. What are we talking about here? The national early poll leader, 25% plus. Normally, that's where Democrats are. Biden was at 25% plus in 2020. Hillary Clinton was in 08 and 16. Gore was in 00 and 04. At this particular point, there is no one in the Democratic race for president who's polling at 25% plus.
Messier than a hoarder's basement. I love that. And DNC Chairman Ken Martin is worried, too, despite projecting confidence that Democrats will win next year's elections. He's already laying the groundwork to excuse a poor midterm performance. Listen.
The only thing they can do, of course, is rig the system, is to cheat, to do a mid-cycle.
You better believe Wikipedia will not call this man an election denier. You better believe that not one Democrat will call any Democrat that denies the sanctity and the beauty of Trump's victory or the GOP victory in 26, deniers. It's like these words are only used when Republicans disagree with results. When Democrats disagree with results, it's completely rational and it's good and just.
Redistricting in states to steal more seats, which is essentially what they're doing in Texas.
And Joey, tell me what you make of this. I mean, seriously, these people are delusional.
Number one, I love that guy. We play soccer with him all the time. I've never seen him bring good news to CNN, and so I just love the fact that that even when you're trying to sugarcoat it, you can't. I think that when we look at the midterms, we have to understand that midterms are the most interesting part of our election process. When you have a presidential election, you can adhere to a personality as much as a policy. Midterms are more of an indictment on policy. And I don't think that Trump's idea on the economy and the direction he's moving it and the fact that it isn't at light speed like it was in 2016, I don't think that that's unpopular enough to make up for the fact Democrats don't have one. And the last version of a Democrat idea on the economy is what Trump's trying to fix. And I think it's real easy to connect those dots. But it'll be up to individuals in Congress to go home and sell the big, beautiful bill and Trump's economic vision, not just President Trump. And that's why midterms generally go against the president. I don't know that'll happen this time.
Well, we got a long way to go. But is there any possibility that the Republicans could just pull out all the stops and take everything in the midterm?
Well, the problem is that they only have a 3-seat majority in the House. Democrats don't have to.
And they have
if they can get 5, 6, 7, 10, 19 after the Supreme Court victory, the Democrats can't stop that. It'll be a Supreme Court victory. Remember, the Democrats keep saying that Trump's an authoritarian despot, but they don't ever agree with Supreme Court decisions. Trump gets 93% plus, according to the Brennan Center, of Supreme Court victories. He gets over 93% of Supreme Court victories. So he gets the upcoming Supreme Court victory. It's imminent. That's a lot more seats for Republicans.
Win 21-0
right now.
Exactly.
It's actually already changed.
Yeah, they just got to win by a field goal. That's it. Yeah. So if they just
is that
do
possible,
well enough,
though? Because everybody's predicting the Dems are going to come back, but I'm not convinced.
No, it all depends on the economy, stupid. And in the end,
don't call me stupid.
Not you. Quoting that Carvel guy from 80 years ago. Now, in the end, I think that if Trump's tariff bet pays off, then Republicans could gain in the House and hold the Senate.
Yeah, there are some tough numbers right now on the economy for the president and how people. Kamala Harris, who is it? These are some of the young progressives in the party.
So, Zoran Mamdani, Democrats, socialists or communists or the far left within the Democratic Party, they're taking over the political party because they're true believers. Well, they're passionate, they're energetic, but for example, what they believe in leads to poverty. So socialism leads directly to poverty. Communism leads to poverty. That's why the Berlin Wall fell. That's why the Soviet Union fell. Lines in government-run supermarkets, which is what Mamdani wants in New York. He also wants to raise corporate taxes, and then businesses and corporations leave New York. Then there's less jobs. Then there's more of a need for social safety nets. This is a very simple thing that takes, it's a terrible tragedy that always takes place with communism, socialism, but we'll get to that in a second.
On who should lead Democrats.
I really like AOC. Unfortunately, I would like to see her stand and be more vocal about Palestine. But other than that, I really think that she should be the leader of the Democratic Party, as she is a Democratic socialist. Being also a young person.
I pray to God AOC becomes the leader of the Democratic Party. I pray to God. It would be so wonderful because she would have to debate. She would have to debate Republicans. She'd have to actually. Have you seen AOC in any debate at all? Have you seen AOC articulate why Democrats need to pass Green New Deal legislation, not a resolution? Have you seen AOC debate the merits of single-payer health care? I haven't. I would love to see her, even though I don't believe those things are feasible. I used to when I was 10 years ago. I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. Let's continue.
A young voter, a college student, seeing people like Zohran Mamdani, AOC just gaining so much more footing and so much more recognition in the policy field is very empowering.
I think candidates like Zohran Mamdani and AOC are really inspiring to see. They, someone like Mamdani, a Muslim like me, and Zainab here, it's so inspiring to see. And so I think that someone like that in 2028 can carry a lot of momentum. I think people are so excited.
So it goes back, Lawrence, to our point.
So AOC and Zohran Mamdani bring energy, they bring passion, they bring electricity to the Democratic Party. Their policies are not what Democrats want, not what the country would benefit from. If you want single-payer health care, then pass legislation. If you want or run on passing legislation. If you want to defund ICE and repeal deportation laws, then do so. Run on AOC, Zohran Mamdani. They're not going to run on repealing existing deportation laws. They'd rather vilify ICE. Democrats would rather vilify ICE than actually implement their value system within the law, which would be repealing existing deportation statutes. They don't want to do that because they run on hysteria and emotion. They don't want to repeal existing immigration deportation laws. They don't want to pass legislation for Green New Deal or single payer. They wanted to ban fracking. Okay? When I had my head in the sand and was completely indoctrinated or whatever I was a lifelong Democrat, and the Democrats, the political party changed so drastically within such a short period of time, within a couple of years. So I didn't really do much thought on it. It sounded moral. It sounded just. And it was appealing to me because it sounded moral and just. I didn't realize that banning fracking, or I didn't do enough homework to realize banning fracking would lead to exponential increase in heating your home during the winter. I didn't realize that the Green New Deal or a Green New Deal legislation or single-payer healthcare is not only not feasible in terms of the economy. Single states. Okay, Vermont doesn't have single-payer health care. Why? Somebody should ask Bernie Sanders that.
Point earlier about nothing's changed, no lessons learned. Right. It's resist Donald Trump, and move as far left as.
This is the best thing right here for the Republican Party, for President Trump, for J.D. Vance, for Rubio. This right here does not. Zohran Mamdani and AOC do not have any laws that they want passed, legislation that they want passed, any specific legislation nationally. AOC wants resolutions. The Green New Deal is a resolution, not law. Okay, single payer, healthcare, Medicare for all. She's not talking about that. They're not. Does Zohran Mamdani and AOC, do they want to repeal existing deportation statutes that Democrats helped pass? That's why President Trump, Zohran Mamdani and AOC, they're exactly why President Trump won the Latino vote. They're exactly because a lot of Latinos and Hispanic voters came from countries with the economy and policies and laws that Mamdani and AOC want to implement in the United States of America. And so when you have Democratic socialists or you have socialists say we're just and moral, well, then where's the legislation? I don't see any. Where are the laws that socialists want implemented within Congress? I would love to. If socialism is just and moral, why don't the Democrats like AOC and Zohran Mamdani have any national legislation that they want passed through Congress? Because it's all emotion and theatrics. They don't really want any legislation nationally passed because, number one, it wouldn't be feasible in terms of the economy, or there wouldn't be any economic benefit, or it's just not feasible at all in terms of economics. Number two, they would lose miserably in a national election with their policies that are favorable within certain parts of New York, for example.
It's possible in the Democrat Party, AOC and others seem to be still getting the attention.
Yeah, and that's where all of the energy is for them. Look, losing stinks. It's the worst. And when you lose, everybody's a loser. You know, you look backwards and you see Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and they're both losers. And you start seeing them start like carping back and forth. And then you look forward and you have AOC and Mamdani and others who are part of the truly radical, crazy left-wing fringe of the party that, you know, say what you want to about somebody like Nancy Pelosi. She was very effective at keeping the fringe part of her candidate, of her party, under wraps.
Pelosi was very effective at picking stocks. She was very effective at outperforming the market. How did that happen? To my super chat, thank you. Thank you again. Perictorius, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Perictorius, thank you again. Greatly, 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 greatly appreciate it. To my super chat, thank you. By the way, why are American socialists so wealthy? It's unbelievable. The furthest left YouTubers, Twitch streamers, they make $1 million plus a year easily. You could find the most vocal socialist on any major social media platform. They're likely making, or the most vocal leftist. I'm not going to bring up names, but like, let's say the top 3 or 4 or 5 leftists that fancy themselves like socialist or whatever, which is nonsense because they're no better capitalists than American socialists. Oh my God. What a lucrative, amazing capitalist venture. The most popular American socialist pundits make easily over $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year, probably $1 million to $1.5 million a year, which God bless them. They work hard. They work hard with their own companies, and and they all have companies, by the way. Okay, you have a YouTube channel, you have a company. So anyway, let's continue. These are American socialists are the best business people. The best American socialists are the best capitalists you could ever have. My God. Oh, and the money. Oh my God, the money that AOC has raised. Possible campaign finance violations with certain PACs. Gee, how did those political action committees get started 10 years ago? That's interesting. Gee, I wonder how.
As she kind of rides off the sunset, Chuck Schumer is left. He doesn't know what to do. He has no ability to keep this fringe under wraps. And that's where all the energy is. That's where all the excitement is. The problem is when you get outside of the party, there isn't a broad, widespread general election support for this crazy nonsense. Full-blown communism here in New York City.
Well, you're right, Charlie. I think what this new generation of socialists, Marxists, what they do very well is they diagnose the problem very well. When they talk about affordability and they say, you should, the quality of health care, even what's happening in Gaza, they say the children should not be dying. Of course, they don't say Hamas is responsible for a lot of the deaths there. Many of their solutions are so jacked up, but they do a great job in telling the American people, I understand your pain. Kind of, in effect, like Donald Trump, addressing the working class, people that feel forgotten in America. His solution is different. Bill Maher has a warning for the Democrats. Okay, yeah, these young people are crafty. They are inspirational. But if you run these people, the GOP will win the next election. Watch.
Do you think that he would have the power and influence to be able to, usher in socialism?
He definitely has the power and influence to elect J.D. Vance or whoever.
Wait a second. What's wrong with socialism? I mean, that's the thing with Democrats, Democratic pundits. If you like socialism, run on it. Run on it. Run on socialism. Be proud. President Trump was proud to enforce immigration laws. He loved tariffs. His foreign policy. I hope, God forbid, there's any, there's not going to be a land invasion or anything like that. I pray, but that would destroy 2028 and the midterms. So that's not going to happen. And he's the most anti-war president that we've had in decades. Okay, even with what's going on now, decades. And a lot of it is gunboat diplomacy being the operative word. Anyway, that's a whole other story. Why don't Democrats just run on socialism? Just do it. If it's moral, if socialism is moral and just, run on it nationally. Oh, you can't win? Oh, why can't you win nationally? Oh, okay. So it's just another Democratic primary, a farce, a theatrical performance, just to foment enough emotion to get people to the polls.
Ever is the Republican candidate next time. It is a walking commercial for the Republican Party nationally.
The Republicans are going to.
When you let the Democrat socialists, and now they're actually calling themselves socialists, when you let them take over a major American city, this is what you get.
If you're
again, if Democrats love socialism, run on it nationally. If Zoran Mamdani thinks that New York City-run grocery stores is good, run on it nationally. Say we should have Soviet, Union-style central planning grocery stores throughout the country. If it works in New York, why doesn't it work throughout the country? Why don't Democrats run legislation on, why don't they run on increasing the corporate tax? Why don't they run on Green New Deal? Why doesn't Zoran Mamdani and AOC, well, he's a mayor, but let's say, or will be a mayor, but let's say AOC wants a Green New Deal. Well, where's the law? Where's the legislation? Why don't they have single-payer healthcare legislation? Why don't they repeal? Why doesn't Mamdani and AOC want to repeal, like I said, deportation statutes instead of just simply putting ICE agents at risk? Government agents, government employees. Democrats loved federal law enforcement in January of 2021. Oh, but now they don't love. Now they don't love federal law enforcement. No.
If you're engaging with a psycho who all they care about is controlling you, they're very good at diagnosing problems. Yeah. They're very good at figuring out what your weak points are. And that's, I would argue, what a lot of these people are doing. That's right. They recognize that if you can focus on these problems, then you can, use that dissatisfaction to gain power for yourself.
Right. When I see his face, I think immediately of his pitch for government-run grocery stores.
That'll work out.
And I don't think there's any reasonable American who hears that and thinks that that's something that will work for them and their family.
But he's winning. and all of the polls right now. If you take Sliwa out of the polling, he still wins. If you take
I pray to God he wins. He either becomes more of a capitalist because he's forced to in New York, the center of, global business, or one of the centers, if not the center, Wall Street. He either becomes more of a capitalist, then the socialists get upset with him, and then he's a Bernie Sanders, socialist in name only, or whatever, or he's actually a socialist and the economy tanks, there's poverty even increases, and the city, God forbid, goes bankrupt.
Adams out of the polling, he still wins. If you take Cuomo out of the polling, he still wins in New York City. This is supposed to be the financial capital of the world, and people are willing to elect a socialist. And,
And God bless New York. Okay, I have family in New York. I love New York. I love New York. Okay? I love New York. It's a very important city in my life. A very important city. I love New York. And I don't want New Yorkers to suffer. But when you are indoctrinated for so many years, you go from Giuliani in the early 2000s to Mamdani, and then crime increases, then poverty increases, and there's and the city becomes more run down. Businesses leave, corporations leave. You're voting for these things. You're voting for streets to be less safe. So it's like I don't live in New York, so I don't understand how you go from Giuliani to Mamdani in about 20 years. I don't understand that. But let's continue.
I don't want him to win. I hope people wake up. But I think this will be the next mayor of New York. And the question is, what are we going to do about it?
Yeah, it'll be terrible for New York City, but Republicans will be able to run on this issue for as long as that guy's around.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a huge boon for Republicans and conservatives around the country, and New York City is going to pay their...
I will say this finally, when it comes to Bill Maher, it is so refreshing to see.
By the way, I don't have any statistics. I would venture to say that most Middle Eastern voters, Americans of Middle Eastern descent, are conservative on most issues. I would venture to say that. I would venture to say that they're conservative on a whole lot of issues. Okay, not far left on a whole lot of issues, but let's continue.
Once you remove the TDS, Trump derangements, how you're able to look at the landscape and think logically. Bill Maher is still liberal. He's still a Democrat at heart, but he looks at the deck much differently now that he's met the president. He sees what's happening in the country. The liberals can recover. They can find some type of candidate, but they got to stop focusing on Donald Trump. Yeah. You can't look at every single issue and look at the president. You got to have your own policy prescriptions. And so now he's warning them, guys, if you do this, you may get a temporary sugar high because this is this crazy leftist, but you can't run a candidate like that nationally. People don't like you taking their money.
Yeah.
This is still America.
If Bill Maher can see it, it must be obvious.
Yep.
I'm Steve.
So this will help the redistricting effort after the redistricting after the Supreme Court victory. Supreme Court's going to side with President Trump or Republicans in Louisiana. They're going to side because, like I said, the Latino vote, President Trump almost won after doing very poorly 10 years ago. And so demographic groups, minority groups, people of color are not tied to one political party anymore. They're not. Democrats are losing support for the past 10 years. They're losing support. I mean, there's only so much hysteria and apoplectic, hysterical media coverage that you could stand without asking, okay, well, wait, what did Democrats do for the economy? You know, it's Mamdani is running on making things more affordable. Well, who does he think ran New York? this whole time? Who do you think ran New York for the past 20 years? Democrats. Why? Well, why aren't things affordable? Oh, Democrats.
This morning, Governor, great to have you here. Thank you so much. Well, how would you take these Democrat districts out of your state?
So first of all, one reason why this even exists is because of the gross gerrymandering that's already been done by California, Illinois, New York, Massachusetts, and so many Democrat states. What Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is threatening, and that is if Texas goes through with redistricting that eliminates 5 Democrat seats and aligns our congressional delegation with the values of the state of Texas, he says that he will work toward eliminating 5 Republican seats in California. And I'm saying that if he tries to do that, we have the capability, using the same strategy that they're using in California, to eliminate in Texas not just 5 seats of Democrats, but in fact 10 seats of Democrats. Yeah. And so here's what we know to oversimplify this. And that is, before Texas is working to redraw the congressional lines in the state of Texas, California, Illinois, and New York, they've gone to extremism with regard to drawing lines that eliminate Republicans from the congressional delegations in their states, and they have run out of bullets and will not be able to make any further changes in the future. Right. But Texas and other Republican states will be able to make our states have larger Republican delegations in Congress.
Well, they wrote the book on gerrymandering, and to your point, they got no room left to go in the blue states, so it's not a winning proposition for them. But I want to get to this issue. You've issued warrants for Democrats who have fled the state. We've been following that. What kind of punishment could they face back in Texas?
So there's several different punishments. One is that the warrant is to arrest them if they set foot back into the state of Texas.
So, for example, this was a couple months ago, but when there was a redistricting battle, and you heard Governor Abbott state that Democrats can't gerrymander anymore. Republicans can do the same type of gerrymandering and gain seats. And they will do so after the Supreme Court victory. But when Texas Democrats left the state to Illinois, that is embarrassing. That is embarrassing. You should be ashamed to leave your state and go to a favorable, a state of, that's favorable to your political side. So if Republicans in California went to Texas or went to Alabama, or Republicans in let's say New York fled to Texas, how would that help New Yorkers? What would that show? You're leaving the fight. But you're protesting and you're so upset. You're so upset. That's why, the narcissism involved. When they're like, I can't be your friend anymore. When you have wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats who are beautiful people. A lot of them beautiful people. Really, they are. Beautiful, wonderful, amazing people. But sometimes you'll get a text message, I can't be your friend anymore. You like Trump. And it's like, oh, you've convinced yourself that you're so, not only that you're so moral, that your political side is so just, and that if you don't get your way politically, the country, the planet, the world, and the solar system will cease to exist. You've convinced yourself that the opposing political side is the antithesis of truth. Knowing that your side doesn't even have functioning primaries. They don't even have. Biden won his primary. He literally won his primary. What does the man have? Man, come on, man. Cornflakes. I eat cornflakes, man. What does he have to do? Yes, of course he had cognitive issues. This is obvious. But what did he have to do? He won his primary. That wasn't enough. Harris got not even one primary vote, and she usurped Biden. Why? How can you be so convinced as a morally superior liberal or socialist that you are on the side of justice when your own political party that you vote for doesn't even have a primary? Who's the authoritarian tyrant despot? Trump, who wants you to have Second Amendment rights, or Democrats that don't even have a primary? They just pick people after Biden won his primary.
and that will be taken to the Texas Capitol that will restore a quorum and allow us to conduct business. Second, there are several forms of punishment that will be meted out by the Texas House of Representatives that have been established there. Third, I filed a lawsuit in the Texas Supreme Court to have these officials who are Democrats in the Texas House, have them removed from office because they are failing to conduct business as required by the Texas Constitution. What the Texas Constitution requires is that they must be here and act on bills before them. They're failing to fulfill their constitutional duties. I am seeking to have them removed from office because of their dereliction of duty.
Well, the obvious next question is, well, how long do you think this fight will go on?
So this is a very, very interesting Supreme Court argument. And what the Supreme Court, the conservatives on the Supreme Court are saying is, well, when is the end point of gerrymandering based on race? When does it end? It was needed in 1965. Is it still needed in 2025 when you have President Trump almost winning the Latino vote? Took 10 years for President Trump to almost win the Latino vote. So is the Voting Rights Act Section 2 still relevant?
Durational limit in Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. It created a mechanism for reauthorization. It decidedly did not do that in Section 2.
The issue, as you know, is that this court's cases in a variety of contexts have said that race-based remedies are permissible for a period of time, sometimes for a long period of time.
These remedies are permissible for a long period of time, decades. But is it still permissible in 2025? When you know that looking at the Hispanic and Latino vote, you have one of the largest demographic groups, people of color, going from loyal to Democrats to now almost loyal to President Trump or Trump Republicans. You have such a huge, huge shift in support. Trump goes from 28 to 48%. Democrats go from 66 to 51%. That's why Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act is going to be repealed. Because the justices are going to look at the Latino vote in 24 and compare it to 2016. Well, if one of the largest demographic groups within people of color went from overwhelmingly Democrat to almost Trump winning the entire Latino vote, well, then why is Section 2 still relevant in 2025?
Decades in some cases, but that they should not be indefinite and should have an endpoint. And what exactly do you think the endpoint should be, or how would we know for the intentional use of race to create districts?
Well, Justice Kavanaugh, you raised a very important distinction, and that's between remedies and the statute. So a race-based remedy can and should and usually does have a time limit and a durational limit. Section 2 court-ordered remedies have a time limit. And so that is something that is grounded in our case law. What is not grounded in case law is the idea that an entire statute should somehow dissolve simply because race may be an element of the remedy. So, for example, this case has affirmed Title VII. It has affirmed Section 1982, the Family Medical Leave Act, and also Section 4E of the Voting Rights Act in Katzenbach versus Morgan, and never has it suggested that any of those statutes should dissolve in and of themselves as opposed to the remedy.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think it's the statute. It's the particular application of the statute that entails the intentional, deliberate use of race to sort people into different districts. That particular aspect, I'm guessing, I'm asking what you think the time limit on that should be, or there really shouldn't be a time limit. I think you might be saying there shouldn't be a time limit unless Congress chooses one.
I am saying that. I'm saying there should not be a time limit, but I also think it's critical to emphasize that Section 2 does not require a race-based remedy in all circumstances.
Is that because, can I ask that?
I just wanted to follow up on Justice Kavanaugh's question. What if this is an exercise of Congress's enforcement power? If we're looking at the City of Bernie test and we're saying it has to be congruent and proportional, would that affect your answer to Justice Kavanaugh's question, that if it's going above and beyond what the 15th Amendment requires of its own force, but Congress has actually chosen the Voting Rights Act as a remedy?
So you heard from Kavanaugh, there has to be some kind of end to this specific based redistricting or, congressional districts based on skin color. Like I said, you can't state, and it would be interesting if Democrats, if 90% of Black and Latino voters voted for Trump, 90%, do you think Democrats would care so much about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act? You'd probably, you see them within a couple of years denying, they were always, from 2016 to today, they're still denying President Trump's victories. They're denying the sanctity of elections when they lose. So imagine what would take place if people of color voted 90%, 80% for Trump. You think Democrats would change their tune? You think they'd be, you think they'd have the same vantage point? But the point here is, it's a very important point. Latino voters really saved this country. They saved this country, especially in Miami. The Cuban Americans in Miami saved this country. But Latino voters nationwide, Hispanic voters nationwide, from California to New York, saved the country. Because you have, from 2016, Democrats had 66%. They almost had 70% of the Latino voters. Then they almost lost the Latino vote in 24. They went from dominating to almost losing. Okay, in 8 years. It's not 10 years, that's 8 years. And then in 8 years, President Trump went from 28% to 48%. He almost won the Latino vote. Trump came close to winning Latino vote. And that shows that skin color, or, a person of color is not tied, just like any American, no matter who you are. You're not born to just simply vote Democrat or Republican. You can change your mind. I could 10 years from now say I'm voting Democrat. Even though I love Trump, I can't stand the Democratic Party. Maybe if Chris Christie or Nikki Haley is the Republican and Tulsi Gabbard runs as a Democrat, I'm voting for Tulsi Gabbard. She's the much better foreign policy. And foreign policy is that's my number one concern. I don't want endless wars. Okay. The rebuttal will be, oh, look what Trump is doing now. It's like, well, you know what? It's called diplomacy. A certain type of diplomacy. But anyway. Not everything I'm just kind of referring to. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It does matter, but I'm not going to get into it. He didn't have a major invasion under Biden, and he didn't send Americans into never-ending wars like Biden and Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld. Which, by the way, really quickly, how does Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld, how on earth do they get their legacies completely whitewashed and given a new coat of paint beyond belief by pundits? I don't get it. I don't even want to go there. But anyway, hit subscribe if you're new. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right now. It's in the description. We'll have a segment on Trump winning the Supreme Court winning the midterms for President Trump and the GOP. God bless you all. I'll be back probably about 6 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody, to my super chat. Thank you. Love you all. Have a great, fantastic day. Stay safe. I'll see you on H.A. Goodman's other channel.